Welcome back to the last episode of Shelftober 2023, I guess I should say. I do plan to do this again next year. If you are new, welcome. This series is the last of a series where I have been going through and decluttering, dusting, and displaying all of the shelves in my domain of the household during the months of Shelftember and Shelftober. And the original goal was to go through and do this every day, 2 shelves per day in the month of September. And things didn't quite work out that way. And so I've typically done between 4 and 7 shelves each week in the September-October timeframe. So this is week number 9. I will link the playlist in the end screen and in the description box if you want to go back and need some inspiration for getting your shelves cleaned up. Hopefully you know how to clean yourselves. Anyway, so this is probably the hardest shelf area in my house for a couple of reasons. Number 1, it is sort of hard to get to. There is stuff on the floor that I am leaning over to get to these shelves. Number 2, as I've been thinking about it, I don't think I have actually cleaned these shelves since I moved in, and we moved in back on New Year's Eve of 2005, which is almost 18 years ago. If you don't know me, dusting is by far my worst cleaning skill. Like, I know how to physically do it. It was actually one of my chores as a kid, I believe. And yeah, no. Dusting and I do not get along. But as I typically do, I thought it might be good to kind of ponder on a few thoughts while you watch me clean. Since this series is coming to an end this week, at least for this year, I thought it would be good to kind of reflect just a little bit. So some observations. Observation number 1. I have a lot of shelves. And I mean, I realized that when I started this whole project, but man, it just seems like they grew. Observation number 2. They collect a lot of dust. I'm not sure exactly. Now, number 1, I just am horrible at dusting. Like, I just don't do it. I didn't like that chore as a kid. I didn't like that chore when I was helping clean at my grandma's house. It's just not one that gives me warm, fuzzy feelings. Well, I guess maybe it gives me warm, fuzzy feelings as I'm coughing up dust balls. Yes, I probably should have worn a mask. And no, I did not. Anyway, luckily, I don't have a lot of chemicals in my house, so it's not a huge concern. Anyway, at least as far as the toxicity of them. But yeah, anyway. So observation number 3, I guess, is that I went into this project expecting to mainly be dusting and putting things back. And it turned out that I actually decluttered a lot by doing this. And I think part of that is because when I did start helping Grandma clean, one of the first assignments I was given was to dust everything in the living room. And I was dusting and putting trash back on shelves. So very quickly I noticed that one of the criterias for the decluttering part of this project was if I don't want to dust it a second time, it didn't get put back on a shelf. Observation number 4. There are some things that can be displayed in such a way that they do not collect dust anymore, but they are still fairly visible. So maybe I'm corralling things in a container that does have a lid, but it's like a container that I readily can recognize as being something. Probably the most notable on this was like the button collections. I know what's in the button collections because, that's one of those things that one of the few memories I have when we lived in Tennessee was sitting there stringing buttons onto a string out of the little green tin. while mom sewed. So stuff like that, it can be sort of tucked away in such a way. I've got the stuff and I'm dusting one item instead of many. And so stuff like grandmother's button collection is now tucked inside a little container, and that makes it easier to dust. Things like the marking utensil type stuff, like the chalk, or in the kitchen, I have the sort of spare part for the rotisserie, for the Instant Pot, for the mandolin, all bagged. So I can easily see it, but I don't have to dust individual items when I am ready to dust again. I'm not sure what number I'm on now, maybe 5? And this might be more of a hope. Since there are areas of my house that I've never dusted before, obviously, because like this is one of them. The hope is that next year I will actually be able to fit it all into the month of September, just because it is more of a maintenance clean rather than such a huge project. I'm just going to call it observation 6 and fix it in text on screen if I'm wrong. Observation number 6, having trays, containers, and things that still allow stuff to be visible but easily movable definitely helps with the dusting. Hello, little bit. You didn't get in this video at all. They haven't seen you in like 2 weeks. Okay, moving right along after that brief intermission to deal with the little ones. Little bit. Leave the scarecrow alone. Anywho, definitely need a maintenance mode cleaning routine, even if I do a more in-depth Shelftember again next year. I did figure out that on the day of trick-or-treating here, I was able to walk out to the... Actually, so we went and we picked up candy, day of. And then the young one brought that inside, and I grabbed the tote out of the shed of decorations, and we were actually able to decorate for Halloween in less than a day. And that will be coming back in a bigger way next year. I haven't really been decorating for holidays at all for the last few years, and we really like Halloween. So I was a little surprised. They had kind of outgrown the whole trick-or-treating thing to some degree, but they actually both went out this year. I'll plan ahead a little bit more next year. I'll probably have an actual costume, because chasing a cat in 40-degree weather in shorts and a witch's hat, I'm sure my neighbors think I have lost my ever-loving mind. Anyway, but we were able to do a little bit of decorating and stuff for the holiday. And because I had done all of my front entryway decluttering and dusting, that was actually pretty easy. I do need to deal with the stack of donation stuff. That is beyond out of control. And to the point that little bit is pulling down some of the Halloween decorations that are going away. Anyway, I do think that I've got things much more together. As I think a lot of people have found, like keeping things in one category in one spot is a good way to not duplicate as much. And so like having one specific area for gardening supplies or one specific area for this or that. Like on this shelf, this is actually where I would come to look for excess cleaning supplies most of the time, but that might not be quite the right way to phrase that. Like I look for Castile soap here. I look for, say, an extra brush or a scrub brush here. And you'll see me find cheesecloth here in a minute. If you watch my Azure hauls, I was going to rebuy cheesecloth because I had ordered the wrong thing a couple months ago. trying to get more of what I needed. And I actually have some up here that I got from Grove Collaborative 5 or 6 years ago. But, it's hanging out with the light bulbs because, doesn't everybody store their cheesecloth with the light bulbs? I think over the course of the last 2 months, a lot of the areas that were not together in categories are very much more so now. Because as I have gone through systematically and cleared shelves in the house, the stuff that doesn't belong there gets put in the first place I'd look for it. So everything is kind of coming together, I guess you could say, in the spaces I would look for them. And I feel like that was probably like 2 or 3 observations in there without counting. But anyway, I don't know. So 8 or 9. I think one of the things, I know Melinda from Melinda Plain and Simple did something when she was doing 30 bags in 30 days and looking for small items specifically. I think in a way it's kind of doing the same thing as the shelf project did, in that at some point you have to deal with the little odds and ends that get shoved places or not dealt with. If you are continually going over the big categories, you might deal with the categories, but then there's other stuff that just is there and doesn't get dealt with because it's not big enough to get mentioned in all of those lists of things you should declutter today. They aren't looking at the 50 million keys that you have sitting around, or the, odd stack of light bulbs. And why did I have a shower head and faucet aerators in with the light bulbs? I don't know. I've got all these light bulbs. My light bulbs last for 9 years now, supposedly. Now, we've gone through lots and lots of light bulbs, but at the same time, a lot of these are still the CFL bulbs, where they're the twisty thing with the mercury. Most of my light bulbs anymore are LEDs. So in all honesty, I'll probably pull the LEDs out of there. And next time I go through all of that, I'll probably get rid of the CFLs. Let's make it an even 10 with a final thought, in that anything can seem very daunting if it's just one big ambiguous thing. So if you break down a project like dusting into dusting individual shelves instead of dusting a bookcase or dusting a room, when it's a big project like this, take you 2 months, but you actually get everything done and it's not as overwhelming. So real quick, as you guys see the afters, I did want to tell you what I'm going to do about the paint situation. I will continue to work on that and check different containers of paint. And then as we empty this trash can that we use primarily to empty litter boxes into, it will actually get put in there with the lid off. It still gets some airflow, and then as the litter gets dumped, it will absorb into that, so it's solid and disposable via trash can. So remember, a little bit at a time really adds up over a lifetime.